Part 1. The stars burned cold and distant as Commander Zelthar stared at the view screen. His ship was dying. Around him, the bridge crew worked frantically at their stations, trying to keep the vessel operational for just a few more minutes. Warning lights flashed red across every surface. The air smelled of burned circuits and fear. Outside, the battle was almost over. The Kryn Dominion had come to the Valari system 3 days ago with a simple message: surrender or die. The Valari had chosen to fight. It had been a mistake. Zelthar watched another of his ships explode in a ball of white fire. That made 37 vessels destroyed in the last hour alone. He had started this battle with 200 ships under his command. Now he could count the survivors on his claws. The Valari were not warriors. They were scientists, philosophers, and artists. For 3,000 years, they had lived in peace with the other species of the Galactic Council. They built libraries, not weapons. They wrote poetry, not battle plans. The Council had promised them protection. That protection had not come. A young officer approached his command chair. Her scales were pale with shock. "Commander, the defense grid has fallen. The Kryn are beginning orbital bombardment of the northern continent." Zelthar closed his eyes. 50 million people lived on that continent. He had family there. His sister, her children, countless friends and colleagues. All of them were about to die, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "How long until the Council fleet arrives?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. 6 days, sir, minimum, 6 days. The Valari would be extinct in 6 hours at this rate. The Kryn showed no mercy. They had done this before to other species that refused to submit. The galaxy knew what the Kryn were. Everyone knew. But knowing and acting were different things. Another explosion rocked the ship. Zelthar gripped his chair to avoid falling. The lights flickered and went out for a moment before the emergency systems kicked in. His tactical officer called out damage reports, but Zelthar was no longer listening. He was thinking about the old files he had read years ago. The Galactic Council maintained a database of every known species in the galaxy. Most were friendly, peaceful, willing to cooperate. But there were a few species marked with red warnings. Dangerous species, violent species, species that the Council had decided were too risky for first contact. Among those species was one that lived on a small blue world in a distant arm of the galaxy. The probes had studied them for decades. The reports were frightening. The planet itself was classified as a Class 12 death world, meaning it was one of the most hostile environments known to support intelligent life. Extreme weather, dangerous predators, deadly diseases. Most species would have died out. These beings had thrived. They called themselves humans, and their history was written in blood. The Council had documented their wars, their weapons, their capacity for violence. These humans had fought each other for thousands of years. They had built weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. They had survived extinction events, plagues, and disasters that would have ended most civilizations. The Council's recommendation was clear. Do not contact, do not engage, keep under observation. But desperate times called for desperate measures. "Open all communication channels," Zelthar ordered. "Every frequency in our database." His communications officer looked confused. "Sir, the Council fleet already knows our situation. Broadcasting on all channels will just waste power we need for shields." "I am not broadcasting to the Council," Zelthar said quietly. "I am broadcasting to everyone." Including the restricted species, the bridge went silent. Every member of his crew understood what he was saying. The restricted species were restricted for a reason. Contacting them was forbidden by Council law. It had never been done before. "Commander, if we contact a restricted species, the Council will have to conduct an investigation. There could be consequences." Zelthar looked at the young officer and smiled sadly. "What will they do, exile us? Court-martial me? Look around. We are already dead. Our world is dying. The only question is whether we die alone or whether we try everything possible to save our people." He turned to the communications station. "Send out a distress signal in every language we have on file. Include our location, the nature of the threat, and a request for immediate military assistance. Make sure the message reaches that blue world." "Earth, sir?" "Yes, Earth." The officer hesitated for only a moment before beginning the transmission. The message went out across space, traveling at light speed toward 1,000 different systems. Most would ignore it. Some would hear it too late. But one system, one species might hear it in time to matter. Zelthar did not know if the humans would come. He did not know if they would even understand the message. But he knew one thing: the humans were warriors. Every report said so. They understood violence in a way the Valari never had. If anyone in the galaxy could fight the Kryn and win, it would be them. Another ship exploded on his view screen. He was down to 11 vessels now. The Kryn were taking their time, playing with them like a predator plays with wounded prey. They wanted the Valari to suffer. They wanted the galaxy to see what happened to species that refused to submit. "Sir, we are being hailed by the Kryn flagship," his communications officer reported. "Put it through." The face that appeared on the screen was insectoid and cruel. Multiple eyes stared at him with cold calculation. Mandibles clicked together in what might have been a smile. "Commander Zelthar," the Kryn leader said in perfect Valari, "your resistance has been amusing, but it is time to end this. Surrender now, and I will make your deaths quick. Continue fighting, and I will ensure every member of your species dies slowly." Zelthar met those alien eyes without flinching. "The Galactic Council will never accept your conquest. They will send fleets. They will stop you." The Kryn leader laughed, a horrible clicking sound. "The Council? Those cowards. They will debate and discuss and form committees while we conquer system after system. By the time they decide to act, the galaxy will be ours. And you, Commander, will be nothing but a memory." The transmission ended. Zelthar sat back in his chair and waited. His crew looked at him, waiting for orders, waiting for hope. He had none to give them. All he could do was keep fighting and pray that somewhere, 42 light-years away, someone was listening. On Earth, in a monitoring station on the moon, alarms began to sound. Lieutenant Amy Clark stared at her console in disbelief. The signal was faint but clear. It was artificial. It was alien. And it was calling for help. Part 2 Amy Clark had been monitoring deep space signals for 3 years. In that time she had heard nothing but cosmic noise, radio bursts from distant stars, radiation echoes from black holes, the natural static of the universe. Nothing intelligent. Nothing that suggested humanity was anything but alone. Until now. She played the signal again, her hands shaking slightly on the controls. The automated translation software was working overtime, trying to decode the message. It was coming through in fragments, translated through multiple language databases, but the meaning was becoming clear. This was a distress call. Someone out there was dying, and they were asking for help. "Colonel Morrison, you need to hear this right now," she said into her communicator. Colonel Jake Morrison arrived at her station within minutes. He was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He had been in the military for 30 years, and Amy had never seen him look surprised. "Until now, play it again," he ordered. Amy replayed the message. The computer had finished its translation. A calm, synthetic voice read out the words that had traveled across space. "This is Commander Zelthar of the Valari Defense Fleet. We are under attack by the Kryn Dominion. Our defenses have failed. Millions of civilians are in danger. We request immediate military assistance from any species capable of faster-than-light travel. Our coordinates are included in this transmission. Please help us," the message repeated, over and over. A desperate loop sent out into the darkness. Jake stood silent for a long moment. Then he picked up the phone that connected directly to Earth Command. "This is Morrison at Luna Station. Wake everyone up. We have confirmed first contact. And it's not friendly." Within an hour, every major government on Earth knew about the signal. Within 2 hours, the emergency protocols were activated. Within 3 hours, President Linda Hayes was in the secure war room deep beneath Geneva, surrounded by advisors, generals, and scientists. The room was crowded and tense. Everyone was speaking at once, arguing about what the signal meant and what humanity should do about it. President Hayes listened for several minutes before raising her hand for silence. "One at a time," she said calmly. "Admiral Chen, what's your assessment?" Admiral Richard Chen was the commander of the United Earth Space Force. He was a short man with a sharp mind and no patience for nonsense. He pulled up a holographic display showing the location of the signal. "The signal is coming from a star system, approximately 42 light-years from Earth. Our translation software has been analyzing it for the last 2 hours. We believe it's genuine. An alien species called the Valari is being attacked by another species called the Kryn. The Valari are asking for military help." "Can we confirm this isn't some kind of hoax?" asked General Paul Wright. "We've run every test we can think of," said Dr. Patricia Cole, head of the science division. "The signal characteristics are unlike anything we can produce. The mathematics in their coordinate system is completely different from ours. Either this is real, or someone has created the most elaborate hoax in human history. Why would they send a distress call to us? Asked Secretary Helen Park. How do they even know we exist? That's the interesting part, Dr. Cole continued. When we fully decoded the message, we found that it was broadcast on over 1,000 different frequencies. They sent it to everyone. They're desperate. President Hayes looked at the holographic display showing the distant star system, 42 light years. Less than a century ago, that distance would have been impossible. Even now, it was at the very edge of what humanity could reach. Can we get there? She asked. Admiral Chen nodded. The quantum fold drive has been tested successfully. We can get ships there. The question is whether we should. Explain. Madam President, we don't know anything about this situation. We don't know who the Volari are. We don't know who the Kryn are. We don't know what we'd be walking into. This could be a trap. This could be a conflict we don't understand. We could make things worse. Or we could save lives, said Ambassador Carlos Martinez. If this is real, and I believe it is, then we're listening to a species being wiped out. What does it say about humanity if we do nothing? The room erupted in argument again. Some believed humanity should stay hidden, stay safe. Others believed this was exactly the moment humanity had been preparing for. The Deep Space Fleet had been built in secret over the last 30 years, designed to protect Earth from threats from space. But those threats had never come. Now a threat existed, but it wasn't aimed at Earth. President Hayes listened to both sides. She thought about her 2 children, both serving in the Space Force. She thought about all the parents on Earth who had children in the military. She thought about what it would mean to send those young people into battle against an unknown enemy light years from home. But she also thought about what it would mean to do nothing, to listen to a desperate cry for help and turn away. How long would it take to prepare the fleet? She asked. 12 hours to load supplies and brief the crews, Admiral Chen answered. Once they jump to quantum fold space, the journey will take approximately 6 hours. And how many ships are we talking about? The entire Deep Space Fleet. 73 warships, 15 support vessels, and 26 troop transports. About 40,000 personnel total. President Hayes closed her eyes. 40,000 people. 40,000 lives she was about to risk on a species they had never met, in a conflict they didn't understand. But she thought about her grandfather, who had served in World War II. He had told her stories about why people fight. Not for territory or resources, but because some things are worth fighting for. Freedom, justice, the idea that when someone calls for help, you answer. Prepare the fleet, she said quietly. We launch in 12 hours. The room went silent. Then Admiral Chen nodded. Yes, Madam President. But Admiral, she continued, make sure every person on those ships volunteers. I won't order anyone into this fight. They need to choose it. Understood. As the room cleared and people rushed to their tasks, Ambassador Martinez approached the President. Do you think we're doing the right thing? President Hayes looked at the holographic display, at the star system so far away where people were dying. I don't know. But I know what's wrong. Wrong is having the ability to help and choosing not to. We're about to find out what kind of species we really are. Across Earth, the call went out. Volunteers were needed for a dangerous mission into deep space. The nature of the mission was classified, but everyone understood it might be one way. They might not come home. The response shocked everyone. Within 6 hours, over 100,000 people had volunteered. Soldiers, pilots, engineers, medics, all of them willing to travel into the unknown for people they had never met. Captain Nicole Brown stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching her crew prepare for launch. She had served in the Navy for 15 years before joining the Space Force. She had never expected to see real combat. None of them had. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Commander Peter Hayes, approached her. All stations report ready, Captain. We can launch on your order. Nicole looked at the faces of her crew. Young faces, scared faces, but determined. They knew what they were doing. They had all chosen to be here. Send a message to Admiral Chen, she said. UES Defiance is ready to defend the innocent. All across the fleet, similar messages came in. One by one, 73 warships reported ready. Humanity's first military fleet built to defend Earth was about to travel 42 light years to defend someone else. President Hayes watched from Earth Command as the ships began to move. She thought about the message they were about to send to the galaxy, not just with words but with actions. Humanity was here, and humanity answered when someone called for help. Part 3. The quantum fold drive bent space in ways that hurt to think about. One moment the human fleet was in orbit around Luna. The next moment they were somewhere else entirely. The journey that should have taken decades at light speed took 6 hours. When the ships emerged from fold space, the crew of every vessel immediately went to battle stations. They had trained for this moment, but training was different from reality. On the view screen of the UES Defiance, Captain Nicole Brown saw what they had traveled 42 light-years to find. It was a graveyard. Thousands of destroyed ships drifted through space. Pieces of hull, frozen bodies, debris from battles already lost. Some of the wrecks were still burning despite the vacuum of space. Others had been torn apart so violently that it was hard to tell they had once been ships at all. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Commander Peter Hayes. In the middle of the carnage, 12 ships were still fighting. They were smaller than the human vessels, with elegant curves and what looked like solar collectors along their hulls. These had to be the Volari. They were surrounded by over 100 larger ships that were hammering them with weapons fire. "Those must be the Kryn," Nicole said. "Tactical, give me a full scan of the enemy vessels." The tactical officer, a young woman named Karen White, worked quickly at her station. "Captain, the Kryn ships are using plasma-based weapons. They charge up and release bursts of superheated gas. Their shields appear to be energy-based, designed to dissipate heat and radiation." "What about their armor?" Reading as standard composite materials. "Nothing too advanced. They're relying heavily on their shields." Nicole nodded slowly. The human fleet had been built using different principles. Earth had no experience with alien technology, so they had built ships based on what they knew. Kinetic weapons, railguns, missiles with explosive warheads, old-fashioned physics applied with new technology. Admiral Chen's voice came through on the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is command. I want a defensive formation around those Volari vessels. We're going to get between them and the enemy, and someone get me a communication channel to whoever's in charge of that mess." The human fleet moved forward. The Kryn noticed immediately. Several of their ships broke off from attacking the Volari and turned to face these newcomers. "Captain, we're being hailed," said Communications Officer Lisa Grant. "It's the Kryn. Put it through." The face that appeared on the view screen made several crew members gasp. It was insectoid, with multiple eyes arranged around a flat head. Mandibles clicked together when it spoke. The translation software took a moment to process, then converted the alien sounds into English. "Unknown vessels, you are interfering in Dominion business. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Nicole glanced at Admiral Chen's face on a smaller screen. He was smiling, but it was not a kind smile. "This is Admiral Richard Chen of the United Earth Fleet," he said calmly. "We received a distress call. We're here to respond to it. I suggest you're the ones who should leave." The Kryn commander's mandibles clicked rapidly. The translation software indicated this was laughter. "Foolish mammals. Your vessels are small and few in number. We have conquered 17 systems. We will add your corpses to our collection." Admiral Chen's smile disappeared. "We tried being polite. All ships, weapons free. Show them what happens when you pick a fight with a death world." The Kryn fleet surged forward. 50 ships moved to engage the human fleet, while the rest continued attacking the Volari. The Kryn clearly expected this to be quick. They were wrong. The first Kryn ship to enter weapons range fired its plasma cannons. Bright streams of superheated gas crossed the distance between the ships and struck the UES Defiance's shields. The shields flickered but held. The plasma dissipated harmlessly. "Their weapons are less powerful than expected," Karen reported. "Our shields are holding easily." "Good," Nicole said. "Return fire. All railguns target that lead ship." The UES Defiance had 6 railgun turrets. Each one fired a tungsten rod the size of a telephone pole at a significant fraction of light speed. The Kryn ship's energy shields, designed to stop plasma and lasers, did absolutely nothing against solid objects moving at relativistic speeds. 6 rounds hit the Kryn ship in less than a second. They punched through the hull like it was paper. The ship didn't explode dramatically. It just came apart, torn into pieces by the kinetic energy of the impacts. "Target destroyed," Karen said, her voice filled with surprise. All around the battlefield, similar scenes played out. The UES Vengeance fired a spread of missiles that overwhelmed a Kryn destroyer's point defense systems. The explosions tore the ship in half. The UES Liberty used its laser arrays to slice through the hull of a Kryn cruiser. cutting it into pieces. The Kryn had expected their shields to protect them. They had fought dozens of species, and those species all used energy weapons. The Kryn shields could handle energy weapons. But humanity had taken a different path. Humans had learned to kill each other long before they reached space. They knew that sometimes the simplest solution was the best one. Throw something hard at your enemy and throw it fast. "Command, this is Vengeance," came a voice over the fleet channel. Captain Henry Blake sounded excited. "Their shields don't stop our kinetic weapons at all. It's like shooting fish in a barrel." "Confirmed," Admiral Chen replied. "All ships maintain formation and pick your targets. Let's clear the field." Inside the command ship of the Kryn fleet, panic was spreading. The fleet commander watched in disbelief as ship after ship was destroyed by these unknown aliens. The mammals should have been easy prey. Instead, they were cutting through the Kryn fleet like it wasn't even there. "How are they doing this?" the commander screamed. "Our shields are rated to stop any energy weapon in the galaxy." "They're not using energy weapons, Commander," his tactical officer reported. "They're using projectiles, solid objects moving at extremely high velocity. Our shields can't stop them." The commander felt something he had not felt in years: fear. The Kryn Dominion had conquered 17 systems because they had superior technology. Their shields could stop anything other species threw at them. But these humans had simply gone around the problem. They used weapons so primitive, so basic, that the Kryn had never prepared for them. "All ships fall back," the commander ordered. "We need to regroup and analyze their tactics." But it was too late. The human ships were faster and more maneuverable than they looked. As the Kryn tried to retreat, the human fleet pursued them relentlessly. Lieutenant Commander Greg Foster piloted a small corvette called the UES Swift. He had been a fighter pilot before joining the Space Force, and he flew his ship like a fighter. 3 Kryn destroyers tried to surround him, but he dove between them, forcing them to shoot at each other while he peppered them with cannon fire. "This is Foster," he called out cheerfully. "I've got 3 on me and I'm having the time of my life. These bugs can't fly worth a damn." "Foster, maintain discipline on the comms," his squadron commander ordered. But there was laughter in her voice. On board his damaged ship, Commander Zeltar watched the battle with amazement. His crew stood silent, unable to believe what they were seeing. The Kryn fleet, which had destroyed 200 Volari ships in a matter of hours, was being torn apart by these unknown newcomers. "Who are they?" whispered his communications officer. Zelthar thought about the desperate message he had sent. He thought about the restricted files, the warnings about the dangerous species from the Blue World. He thought about all the reasons the Galactic Council had decided humanity was too violent for first contact. "They're from Earth," he said quietly. "They're humans. And I think we just learned why the Council was afraid of them." The battle continued for 4 more hours. The Kryn fought desperately, but they were outmatched. Their weapons couldn't penetrate human shields effectively. Their shields couldn't stop human weapons at all. And the humans fought with a coordination and aggression that the Kryn had never encountered. When it was over, not a single Kryn ship remained. Some had been destroyed, others had been disabled and boarded by human marines. The human fleet had lost 3 destroyers and suffered damage to several other ships, but they had won decisively. Admiral Chen looked at the tactical display showing the destroyed Kryn fleet. Then he looked at the 12 surviving Volari ships. "Get me a communication channel to the Volari commander. I think we need to have a conversation." Part 4 Commander Zelthar stood in the docking bay of the UES Defiance, surrounded by what remained of his crew. 37 Volari officers and crew members, all that survived from a ship that once held over 200. They had been rescued from their dying vessel and brought aboard the human flagship. Now they waited nervously to meet their saviors. The docking bay was huge, far larger than anything the Volari built. Human crew members walked past, some stopping to stare at the aliens in their midst. The Volari stared back. The humans were shorter than most Volari, but they moved with confidence. Their eyes held something Zelthar had only seen in predators. A door opened and a group of humans entered. The lead human wore a uniform with more decorations than the others. He was older, with gray hair and steady eyes. Behind him walked a woman with brown hair and a human male carrying what looked like a weapon. Zelthar recognized the universal gesture of a raised hand. He raised his own claw in response. "Commander Zelthar," the human said through a translation device. "I'm Admiral Richard Chen. This is Captain Nicole Brown and Lieutenant Marcus Hill. Welcome aboard the Defiance. Admiral Chen, Zelthar replied carefully. My people owe you a debt we can never repay. You saved millions of lives today. Admiral Chen smiled slightly. You sent out a distress call. We answered. That's what neighbors do. He gestured for them to walk, though I have to admit I'm curious about something. Why did you send a signal to Earth? According to what we've decoded from your full message, we were marked as a restricted species. Zelthar felt his scales flush with embarrassment. Yes. The Galactic Council classified humanity as too dangerous for first contact. Your world was rated as a Class 12 death world. Your species showed high levels of violence and aggression. The Council decided contact would be too risky. Captain Brown laughed. Well, they weren't exactly wrong about the violence part. But they were wrong about everything else, Zelthar continued. The Council has maintained peace for 3,000 years by avoiding conflict. They believe that dangerous species cannot be trusted. They never considered that sometimes you need warriors, not diplomats. They walked through the corridors of the ship. Zelthar noticed everything. The humans built their ships differently than the Valari. Everything was reinforced, armored, designed to take damage. Even the walls looked like they could withstand weapons fire. These were ships built by a species that expected to fight. Admiral Chen led them to a conference room. Inside, several other human officers waited. Zelthar recognized ranks and positions from the translation briefings. Military leaders, all of them. Please sit, Admiral Chen said, gesturing to chairs that had been modified for Valari anatomy. We have a lot to discuss. Once everyone was seated, a human technician activated a holographic display. It showed the Valari system and the surrounding space. First things first, Admiral Chen said. Tell us about the Kryn. Who are they? Why did they attack you? Zelthar took a deep breath. The Kryn Dominion is an expansionist empire. They appeared in our sector about 50 years ago. At first they seemed interested in trade, but slowly they began making demands. Tribute, resources, territory, species that refused were conquered. And the Galactic Council did nothing, asked Captain Brown. The Council debated. They formed committees. They sent diplomats. The Kryn ignored them all. Over the last 10 years, the Kryn have conquered 17 systems. Billions of beings enslaved or killed. The Council kept promising action, but nothing ever came. Why didn't the Council fight? Asked another human officer, a woman with captain's insignia named Rachel Lee. Because most Council species are like us, Zelthar explained. We're peaceful. We build things, we study things, we create art and science. We have defense forces, but they're small. We never expected to need large militaries because the Council kept the peace. The Kryn knew this. They knew we couldn't fight back effectively. Admiral Chen leaned forward. And so when they came for you, you were defenseless. Yes, we had 200 ships. They had 1,000. Our weapons were designed for defense and crowd control, not war. Their weapons were designed to kill. We lost half our fleet in the first day. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Admiral Chen spoke again. How many Kryn are there? How big is their empire? We estimate they control 20 systems now, including the 17 they conquered. Their fleet numbers in the thousands. Today you destroyed perhaps 5% of their total military strength. The human officers exchanged looks. Lieutenant Marcus Hill spoke up. So we won the battle but not the war. Exactly, Zelthar said. The Kryn will return. They always return. And next time they will bring more ships. They will study your tactics. They will adapt. Then we'd better be ready. Admiral Chen said firmly. Commander Zelthar, I need to know everything about the Kryn. Their technology, their tactics, their weaknesses. Everything you know. Over the next several hours, Zelthar shared everything the Valari had learned about the Kryn. The humans listened carefully, asking detailed questions. Zelthar was impressed by how quickly they grasped complex military concepts. These were people who understood warfare at a deep level. Finally, Admiral Chen sat back. All right, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to help you repair your defense grid and rebuild your fleet. Second, we're going to establish a supply line back to Earth. We're going to need reinforcements and materials. Third, we're going to prepare for the Kryn to come back. Admiral, with respect, why would you do this? Zelthar asked. You don't know us. We're not your people. Earth has no obligation to us. Admiral Chen smiled, but his eyes were serious. Commander, let me tell you about Earth. Our planet nearly killed us 100 times. Diseases, disasters, wars, we started ourselves. We almost went extinct more times than I can count. But we survived, and we learned something important. We learned that the strong have a responsibility to protect the weak. Not because we're better, but because we can. Captain Brown added, "Besides, Commander, you sent out a distress call. As far as we're concerned, that makes you our responsibility now." Zelthar felt something he hadn't felt in days: hope. "What about the Galactic Council? They will want to know about you. They will have questions." "I imagine they will," Admiral Chen said, "and we'll answer those questions. But right now our priority is making sure the Kryn don't come back and finish what they started." Over the next 2 weeks, the human fleet worked alongside the surviving Valari forces. Human engineers helped repair the damaged orbital stations. Human medical teams treated Valari wounded. Human soldiers trained Valari defense forces in new tactics. The Valari learned quickly that humans were different from any species they had encountered. The humans worked with an intensity that bordered on obsessive. When a human engineer said something would be done by tomorrow, it was done by tomorrow. When a human soldier said they would hold a position, they held it. But the Valari also saw the other side of humanity. They saw human medical teams working 30-hour shifts to save Valari wounded. They saw human engineers sharing their food with hungry Valari civilians. They saw human soldiers playing with Valari children who had lost their families. Commander Zelthar stood with Admiral Chen on an observation deck, watching human and Valari crews work together on a damaged station. "Your people are remarkable," Zelthar said quietly. "I was taught that violent species cannot be trusted, that aggression and compassion cannot coexist. But watching your people, I see both." "We're complicated," Admiral Chen admitted. "Yeah, we know how to fight. We've been fighting for our entire history, but we also know why we fight. We fight to protect people who can't protect themselves. We fight because someone has to stand up to bullies like the Kryn. The Council will be afraid of you," Zelthar warned. "They will see your weapons and your warships, and they will fear you." "Maybe," Admiral Chen said. "But fear isn't respect. We're going to have to earn their respect. And we're going to start by making sure the Kryn never hurt anyone again." A communication officer approached them. "Sir, we've received a message from Earth Command. The Second Fleet is being prepared. They'll arrive in 3 weeks with supplies and reinforcements." Admiral Chen nodded. "Good. Tell them to bring everything. If the Kryn want to fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget." Zelthar looked at the human admiral. "Admiral Chen, the Kryn have conquered 17 systems. They have thousands of ships. You have fewer than 100. How can you hope to win?" Admiral Chen smiled. "Commander, humans have been outnumbered and outgunned for our entire history. It never stopped us before. The Kryn think they're apex predators. They're about to learn what happens when they meet a species from a real death world." Part 5. The Galactic Council chambers on the planet Dravis were built to impress. Massive columns reached toward a domed ceiling that showed a holographic display of the galaxy. Representatives from 47 species sat in a circular arrangement, each on platforms adjusted for their specific biology. Today, the chamber was in chaos. Ambassador Thelra of the Council slammed her appendage on the speaker's podium. She was a Dravis, a species that looked like a cross between an octopus and a bird. Her feathers were ruffled with agitation. "Order," she called out. "We will have order in this chamber." Slowly the noise died down. Thelra looked around at the assembled representatives. All of them had heard the news by now. All of them were afraid. 3 weeks ago, Thelra began, the Valari system was attacked by the Kryn Dominion. We all know this. What many of you may not know is what happened next. The Valari sent out a distress call. That call was answered. She activated the holographic display. It showed recordings from the battle. Recordings of ships that looked nothing like any Council species. Ships that moved with deadly precision. Ships that tore through the Kryn fleet like they were made of paper. These vessels came from a planet we have been monitoring for decades. A planet called Earth. A restricted world home to a species we deemed too dangerous for contact. The chamber erupted again. Representatives shouted questions. Some demanded to know why the humans had been contacted. Others wanted to know what would happen next. Ambassador Thelra waited for the noise to settle. "The humans were not contacted officially," she explained. "Commander Zelthar of the Valari sent his distress call on all frequencies, including the restricted ones. The humans responded on their own initiative. They traveled 42 light-years and engaged the Kryn fleet. The results are in the recordings you see." A representative from the Korath species, a tall being with 4 arms, stood up. Ambassador Thelra, the humans destroyed over 100 Kryn vessels. They did what our combined fleets have failed to do for 50 years. How is this possible? Because they are warriors, Thelra said quietly. Their entire history is warfare. Their planet is classified as a Class 12 death world. Everything on their world evolved to kill. The humans simply learned to kill better than anything else. They are apex predators, and they brought that mentality to space. Another representative, a crystalline being from Thera, spoke up. Then we were right to restrict them. They are dangerous. We should demand they leave the Valari system immediately and return to their world. And if they refuse? Asked the Korath representative. Then we enforce it militarily. The Korath representative made a sound that the translator interpreted as bitter laughter. With what fleet? We have watched the humans destroy a Kryn force that outnumbered them significantly. Do you really think our defense forces could stop them? Thelra raised her appendage for silence again. The humans have made no hostile moves toward any council species. In fact, they are currently helping the Valari rebuild their defenses. They have sent medical aid and engineering support. By all accounts, they are behaving as allies. For now, said the Theran representative. But what happens when they decide they want something? What happens when they turn those weapons on us? That is what we are here to decide, Thelra said. The humans have requested to address the council. They want to open diplomatic relations. We must decide how to respond. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives wanted to welcome the humans, grateful that someone finally stood up to the Kryn. Others wanted to maintain the restriction, fearing what humanity might become. Still others wanted to try to control humanity, to limit their expansion and technology. Finally, a vote was called. By a narrow margin, the council agreed to hear what humanity had to say. 2 days later, President Linda Hayes stood before the Galactic Council via long-range transmission. Behind her were the flags of Earth's nations. She wore a simple suit and spoke calmly, despite addressing alien species for the first time in human history. Members of the Galactic Council, she began, I am President Linda Hayes of Earth. I come before you today not as a conqueror but as a neighbor. 3 weeks ago, we received a distress call from the Valari. We responded because it was the right thing to do. We would do the same for any species in need. Ambassador Thelra spoke. President Hayes, your species has been classified as dangerous. Your world is hostile, your history is violent, and your capacity for warfare is unmatched by any known species. Why should we trust you? President Hayes nodded. You're right. Earth is a difficult world. We've had to fight for everything. We've made mistakes. We've fought terrible wars against each other. But we've learned from those mistakes. We learned that strength without compassion is tyranny. We learned that the strong have a responsibility to protect the weak. She paused, letting her words sink in. The Kryn Dominion has conquered 17 systems. They've enslaved billions. They've destroyed entire civilizations. And what has the Galactic Council done? You've debated. You've formed committees. You've sent diplomats. While you talked, people died. The chamber was silent now. Every representative listened. I'm not saying this to criticize you, President Hayes continued. I understand why you prefer peace. Peace is admirable. But peace without the strength to defend it is just a delay before conquest. The Kryn proved that. The Theran representative spoke up. And what do you propose, President Hayes? That we become like you? That we build massive militaries and prepare for war? No, President Hayes said firmly. I propose that you let us do it. Humanity comes from a harsh world. We understand violence in a way most species don't. We've fought wars for thousands of years, but we've also learned to fight for the right reasons, not for conquest or resources, but to protect those who cannot protect themselves. You want to be our protectors? Asked the Korath representative. We want to be your allies, President Hayes corrected. We're not asking to rule anyone. We're not asking for territory or tribute. We're offering our strength in defense of peace. When the Kryn come back, and they will come back, we'll be ready to fight them. When other threats emerge, we'll face them together. Ambassador Thelra considered carefully. And what do you want in return? Recognition, President Hayes said simply. A place in the galactic community. The right to travel, trade, and exist alongside other species. We're not asking for special treatment. We're just asking not to be treated as a threat. But you are a threat, the Theran representative insisted. Your weapons, your ships, your entire military could conquer half the council if you chose to. President Hayes smiled slightly. Yes, we could, but we won't. Do you know why? Because that's not who we are. Humans have fought wars against oppressors and tyrants for our entire history. We've died by the millions to stop conquest and genocide. We don't fight to conquer. We fight to protect. She leaned forward, her voice becoming passionate. 3 weeks ago, the Volari were dying. They called for help. We didn't know them. We didn't owe them anything. But we came anyway because it was right. That's who humanity is. We're the species that hears a cry for help and travels 42 light years to answer it. We're dangerous, yes. But we're dangerous to bullies and tyrants, not to peaceful species trying to live their lives. The chamber was quiet. Then the Korath representative stood. I support accepting humanity into the council. They did what we could not. The Volari are alive because of them. I support it as well, said another representative. One by one, other species added their support. Not all of them. Some remained opposed, still afraid of what humanity represented, but enough supported it. Ambassador Thelra looked at President Hayes. The vote will take 3 days, but I believe you have made your case well, President Hayes. Thank you, Ambassador, President Hayes replied. I know we're different from other species. I know our history makes you nervous, but I promise you this, Earth will never be the aggressor. We will never attack a peaceful species, but we will stand up to tyrants like the Kryn, and we will protect those who need protection. The transmission ended. President Hayes sat down exhausted. Around her, her advisors looked hopeful. Do you think they'll accept us? Asked Secretary Helen Park. I don't know, President Hayes admitted, but we told them the truth. That's all we can do. 3 days later, the vote came in. By a margin of 32 to 15, humanity was granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council. There would be restrictions at first, regular reviews of human activities, and a probationary period. But it was a beginning. On the Volari homeworld, Commander Zelthar stood with Admiral Chen, watching the sunset over a city that had nearly been destroyed. Human engineers had helped rebuild it. Human doctors had saved thousands of Volari lives. Human soldiers had trained the Volari defense forces. Your people have done more for us in 3 weeks than the Council did in 3,000 years, Zelthar said quietly. Admiral Chen smiled. We're just getting started, Commander. The Kryn will be back, but next time you won't face them alone, and neither will we. Part 6, 6 months after the battle at Volari, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The human presence spread across 3 star systems, establishing bases, supply lines, and defense networks. More ships arrived from Earth every week carrying soldiers, engineers, and supplies. But humanity had also changed. Meeting other species, seeing other worlds, understanding their place in a larger universe had given humans a new purpose. They were no longer just defending Earth. They were defending peace itself. Commander Zelthar had been promoted to Admiral of the Volari Defense Forces. He now commanded a fleet of 60 ships, a mix of rebuilt Volari vessels and new designs created with human assistance. The ships looked different from the elegant solar-powered vessels the Volari had once built. These were harder, tougher, designed for combat. But they were still Volari ships, crewed by Volari who had learned that sometimes peace required strength. He stood in the command center of the joint human-Volari military base orbiting his homeworld. Admiral Chen stood beside him, studying tactical displays that showed the defensive network they had built together. The early warning satellites are all operational, Chen reported. If the Kryn come back, we'll know about it hours before they arrive. When they come back, Zelthar corrected. Not if. The Kryn do not forgive defeats. They will return with a larger force. Let them, said a new voice. Captain Nicole Brown entered the command center, followed by Captain Henry Blake. Both looked tired but satisfied. We've been running combat simulations for weeks. The Volari crews are learning fast. Your people have been excellent teachers, Zelthar said, though I admit, some of your tactics are difficult for us to accept. The Volari were raised to value life. Your approach to warfare is very different. Admiral Chen nodded thoughtfully. We value life too, Zelthar. That's why we're good at war. We understand that sometimes the only way to save lives is to be willing to take them. It's not something we enjoy, but it's something we accept. An alarm sounded. All 4 officers turned to the displays. A communications officer called out, Sirs, we're receiving a priority message from Council Space. It's Ambassador Thelra. Put it through, Admiral Chen ordered. The holographic display showed Ambassador Thelra, and she looked worried. Admiral Chen, Admiral Zelthar, we have a situation. The Kryn have attacked the Korath system. The Korath defense fleet is being overwhelmed. They're requesting immediate assistance. Admiral Chen and Zelthar exchanged looks. The Korath had been one of the strongest supporters of human membership in the Council. They were a warrior species themselves, proud and honorable. If they were calling for help, the situation was dire. How many ships do the Kryn have? Admiral Chen asked. Preliminary reports indicate over 300 vessels, Ambassador Thelra said. This is significantly larger than the force they sent against the Valari. They appear to be testing the Council's response. And the Council? Admiral Zelthar asked. The Council fleet is being assembled, but it will take at least a week to gather enough ships to respond effectively. The Korath don't have a week, Admiral Chen said. How long until the Kryn breach their defenses? Estimates suggest 36 hours. Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment. Then he turned to Captain Brown. Get me fleet status. I want to know how many ships we can deploy immediately. Sir, even with the reinforcements, we only have 92 combat-ready vessels, Captain Brown said. That's less than a third of the Kryn force. We've faced worse odds, Admiral Chen said. He turned back to the display. Ambassador Thelra, tell the Korath help is coming. We'll be there in 6 hours. Admiral Chen, I must remind you that you are still under probationary status with the Council. Acting without authorization could jeopardize your membership. With respect, Ambassador, people are dying. We can worry about politics later. Chen out, the transmission ended. Admiral Chen turned to his officers. All right, people, we have 6 hours to prepare. Get every ship ready to move. Load all weapons, maximize fuel and supplies. This is going to be a real fight. Captain Blake grinned. Finally. I was getting tired of simulations. This isn't a game, Henry, Admiral Chen said seriously. The Kryn know about us now. They've studied our tactics from the Valari battle. They'll be prepared this time. Then we'll just have to be better prepared than they are, Captain Blake replied. Admiral Zelthar stepped forward. Admiral Chen, my fleet will accompany you. The Valari owe the Korath a debt. They were among the first to support humanity joining the Council. We will not abandon them. Your fleet isn't fully trained yet, Admiral Chen pointed out. Then this will be excellent training, Zelthar said with a slight smile. Besides, Admiral, did you not tell me that humans learn to fight by fighting? The Valari will do the same. Admiral Chen nodded. All right, but your ships follow my tactical commands. No heroics, no breaking formation. Understood? Understood. The combined fleet jumped to quantum fold space exactly 6 hours later. 152 ships, human and Valari, working together. They emerged at the edge of the Korath system and immediately saw the scale of the battle. The Kryn had brought over 300 ships, just as reported. But these were different from the ships at Valari. They were bigger, heavier, with visible armor plating covering their hulls. The Kryn had learned from their defeat. The Korath were fighting desperately. Their ships were designed for single combat, fast and heavily armed. But they were outnumbered 3-1, and the Kryn were using swarming tactics to overwhelm them. Tactical analysis, Admiral Chen ordered. Karen White worked quickly at her station. Sir, the Kryn have reinforced their hulls with physical armor. Our kinetic weapons will still work, but they'll be less effective. Their shields also appear upgraded. They're using a hybrid system now, designed to slow both energy and kinetic weapons. They adapted, Captain Brown said. Smart, but not smart enough, Admiral Chen replied. They're still using the same formation tactics. They haven't changed how they fight, just what they fight with. That's their mistake. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. The Kryn learned how to defend against our weapons, but they didn't learn how to defend against our tactics. We're going to show them the difference between having technology and knowing how to use it. Battle formation Echo. Move in. The human and Valari fleet spread out in a pattern that confused the Kryn. Instead of forming a defensive line, they split into dozens of small groups. Each group had a mix of human and Valari ships designed to support each other. The Kryn moved to engage, confident in their numbers and new armor. They had defeated dozens of species. They had studied the humans. They believed they were prepared. They were wrong. Captain Nicole Brown commanded a group of 5 ships, 3 human and 2 Valari. As a Kryn squadron moved to intercept them, she gave orders that seemed suicidal. All ships, full speed ahead. We're going right through them. Her group accelerated directly toward the Kryn formation. The Kryn fired their plasma weapons, and the human shields absorbed most of the damage. Then at the last moment, Brown's group split apart, passing around the Kryn ships on all sides. As they passed, they fired, not at the ships but at specific targets. Engine clusters, weapon systems, command bridges. The Kryn's new armor protected their hulls, but it couldn't protect everything. 6 Kryn ships were left disabled, drifting without power or weapons. Brown's group reformed and moved to the next target. All across the battlefield, similar tactics played out. The humans used speed and precision instead of raw firepower. They targeted weak points. They used the Kryn's own numbers against them, forcing the enemy ships into positions where they blocked each other's fire. The Valari ships proved surprisingly effective. Admiral Zelthar had trained his crews well. They might not have the humans' experience, but they had something else. They had motivation. They remembered what the Kryn had done to their world. They fought not just to win, but to ensure it never happened again. Lieutenant Commander Greg Foster found himself in the middle of a Kryn formation with only 2 other ships. Most commanders would have retreated. Foster accelerated. "This is Foster. I'm going to try something stupid. Cover me." He dove straight down toward a Kryn battleship, flying so close to its hull that his shield scraped against theirs. The Kryn couldn't fire on him without hitting their own ship. His escorts took advantage of the confusion to destroy 2 Kryn destroyers. "Foster, that was insane," his squadron commander said. "Thank you, sir," Foster replied cheerfully. The battle lasted 8 hours. When it ended, the Kryn fleet was shattered. Over 200 ships had been destroyed or disabled. The survivors fled into quantum fold space, retreating from a force less than half their size. The human and Valari fleet had lost 19 ships. It was a significant loss, but far less than anyone had expected. In the command center of the lead Korath vessel, High Commander Corvin watched the human ships regroup. He was a massive being over 3 meters tall with 4 arms and scales like armor. His species had been warriors for 10,000 years. They prided themselves on their combat prowess. He had never seen anything like the humans. "Open a channel to Admiral Chen," he ordered. When Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen, Corvin bowed his head in respect.
"Admiral Chen, I am High.